A poor father saved a dying girl. He had no idea she was a billionaire's daughter. The night the rain refused to stop was the same night everything changed for him. The sky poured like it had been holding back years of sorrow, and on a lonely roadside, beneath a flickering streetlight, a man who barely had enough to survive made a decision that would alter more than one life forever. He wasn't looking for trouble, and he certainly wasn't expecting destiny to find him in the form of a barely breathing child lying in the mud. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the smallest act of compassion can change the world, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. His name was Arman, a poor single father who had learned to survive on almost nothing. Life had taken everything from him one piece at a time. First his job during an economic downturn, then his wife to a sudden illness he couldn't afford to treat, and finally any sense of stability he once knew. All he had left was his 6-year-old son, Ayan, and a quiet promise he had made at his wife's bedside, that no matter how hard life became, he would raise their son with love, dignity, and honesty. They lived in a small, crumbling room at the edge of the city, where the walls leaked when it rained and the electricity flickered more often than it worked. Arman worked long hours doing whatever he could find, loading trucks, fixing broken carts, cleaning shops, anything that paid enough to bring home food. Some days were better than others, but most days were just survival. That night he was returning home late, drenched from head to toe, his hands numb from the cold and exhaustion weighing heavily on his shoulders. His mind was occupied with thoughts of his son waiting at home, probably asleep without dinner again. But then, something unusual caught his eye. At first it looked like a pile of discarded cloth near the roadside, but something about it felt wrong. Something in his chest tightened, urging him to look closer. As he approached, the rain blurred his vision, but what he saw made his heart stop. It was a young girl no older than 10, lying motionless in the mud, her clothes torn and soaked, her face pale as if life itself was slipping away. For a moment, Arman froze. He looked around, hoping someone else would appear, someone more capable, someone who could help. But the road was empty, and the rain drowned out any distant sound of life. He knew he didn't have the money for a hospital. He barely had enough for food. Taking her meant risking everything he had left, but leaving her there meant something worse. Without another thought, he picked her up gently, shielding her fragile body from the rain with his own. She was cold, too cold, and her breathing was shallow. His heart raced as he carried her through the dark streets, every step filled with fear and urgency. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or what had happened to her. All he knew was that she needed help, and he couldn't walk away. When he reached his small room, Ayan woke up, startled by the sight of his father carrying an unconscious girl. The boy's eyes filled with confusion, but he didn't ask questions. He had grown up too fast to question kindness. Instead, he quickly brought an old blanket while Arman laid the girl down on their only bed. They had no medicine, no proper supplies, and no experience with such situations. But Arman did what he could. He cleaned her wounds with water, wrapped her in dry clothes, and tried to warm her with whatever little warmth they could create. Ayan sat quietly beside her, holding her hand as if his small presence alone could keep her alive. The hours passed slowly, each second heavy with uncertainty. Arman didn't sleep. He watched her breathing, fearing it might stop at any moment. He whispered silent prayers, something he hadn't done in a long time, asking for a miracle he didn't believe he deserved. Morning came, and with it a faint sign of hope. The girl stirred. Her eyes opened slightly, unfocused at first, then filled with confusion. She looked around the unfamiliar room, her gaze landing on Arman and Ayan. Fear flickered in her expression, but it quickly faded as exhaustion took over again. She was alive, and for Arman that was enough. Days passed, and slowly she began to recover. She didn't speak much at first, and when she did, her words were soft and hesitant. She couldn't remember much, just fragments of a car, loud voices, and darkness. Arman didn't push her. He simply cared for her as best as he could, sharing what little food they had, even when it meant going hungry himself. Ayan grew attached to her quickly, treating her like a sister he never had. He would tell her stories, make her laugh, and sit beside her during the long, quiet afternoons. For the first time in a long while, their small home felt less empty. But outside their fragile world, something far bigger was unfolding. Across the city, a powerful and wealthy businessman was losing his mind with fear. His daughter had been missing for days. Search teams were deployed, police were alerted, and the media was filled with news of the disappearance. Rewards were announced, huge sums of money for anyone who could provide information. Arman had no idea. He didn't watch the news. He didn't have time for it. His world was limited to survival, to making sure his son ate, to keeping the girl alive. The idea that the child in his care belonged to one of the richest families in the country never crossed his mind. One afternoon, everything changed again. There was a knock on the door. Arman hesitated before opening it, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. Standing outside were several well-dressed men, their expressions serious, their presence overwhelming. Behind them, a black car waited silently, its polished surface reflecting the broken surroundings. They asked about a girl. At first, Arman felt fear creep in. He thought they might take her away, accuse him of something, misunderstand his intentions. But when they showed him her photograph, his heart sank. It was her. Moments later, the girl recognized them. Her reaction confirmed everything. Within minutes, the small, quiet world Arman had built over the past few days shattered into something much larger and far beyond his understanding. She was the daughter of a billionaire. What followed was a whirlwind of emotions: gratitude, relief, disbelief. The girl's father arrived soon after, his powerful presence softened by the sight of his daughter alive. He held her tightly, as if afraid she might disappear again, tears in his eyes that no wealth could hide. When he learned what Arman had done, he was speechless. Here was a man who had nothing, yet gave everything he could to save a stranger, a man who didn't ask for money, didn't expect recognition, didn't even know who she was. In a world driven by greed and self-interest, Arman had chosen kindness without hesitation. The billionaire offered him money, more than Arman had ever seen in his life, enough to change everything, enough to erase his struggles forever. But Arman hesitated, not because he didn't need it, but because he didn't want his actions to feel like a transaction. He hadn't saved her for a reward, he had done it because it was right. In the end, he accepted only what he needed, a chance at a better life for his son. The billionaire, deeply moved, offered him a stable job, a proper home, and education for Ayan, not as charity but as respect. Life changed slowly after that. Arman still worked hard, still lived simply, but the weight on his shoulders was lighter. Ayan went to school with a smile on his face, and sometimes they would visit the girl they had saved, who never forgot the man who gave her a second chance at life. Now, before this story comes to an end, I want to ask you something special. If this story is touching your heart, if it's reminding you that kindness still exists in this world, write "kindness wins" in the comments. Let's fill this space with hope. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth that saved the girl. It wasn't power or influence. It was a simple act of humanity from a man who had nothing to give, except his heart. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life.